whatever we knew about this matter before, let us put it on one side of the table and listen with open mind. By way of further introduction, yes, I'm a lawyer of 26 years with specialty in jurisprudence, and I've been on this task for quite a while. I set out as a young man to be a military pilot. I should have been flying jet fighters. I read all the physics and chemistry, mathematics of this work, and still teach them. But by some providence, I ended up in law. And I didn't understand where that was going until in the final year. What we've done in the last 20 years, to probe into, because I ended up from the law, I had my bit in court, and I ended up in the oil industry. But I left the oil industry in 1998 on account of this. Upstream, I left from senior executive position in the upstream. There's nobody left in NNPC today who can argue with me for 10 minutes on national television on what it costs to produce crude, either on land, in the swamp, in the sea, on the desert. I've dealt with from what you call seismic studies, where you are looking for where you could find, to all of what you do in well development, to what you do in piping it around and processing it until the time you transport it and sell. But why did I leave? Because I came face to face with the document by which Shell and Mobil, Egypt, Earth were operating. And I said to myself, what could this mean? Does it mean we're not the owners of this land? That these foreigners will dictate the terms by which they operate? I'm sure you've seen their signposts, those of you who came from Port Harcourt area. NNPC Shell joint venture, Shell operator, Earth. Anyone you see, the operator is foreign. You have a business, a joint venture. You are not to know what it costs to produce whatever it is that joint venture has to do. It is that foreigner who will write down whatever he writes down, and whatever he declares as profit is what you now share. So I began to ask myself, how did we get to that? And it's not a 2-year contract, it was a 50-year lease. Signed off between 1967 and 1969 by people who could not even read properly what was written, under circumstances in which they just signed first and it was explained to them later. How did we even arrive at that point in 1967? We began to probe. It came to where I had to leave everything else to say let's even because we found out there was nothing to be found in our archives. We asked some of our elders, people with gray hair, people who went to negotiate the independence for Nigeria. I happen to have spent plenty of time with the last of them who were alive in course of the last 20 years at least. Enohoro, for instance, spent the last 7 years of his life trying to undo what they did in going to sign us up into this union. We shouldn't have been. But first things first, the research from the known to the unknown led us to where we had to go to. You know the way WikiLeaks gets its information? We had to get the information we were looking for by all means. We broke into the British archives using all available technologies. And by the time we saw what was in black and white, some of them with instructions that they should not be typed, because any day the wrong eyes see them, the whole edifice will come crashing down. Those documents are inside this room now. And we traced things from that way back to what became 1914. And from that 1914, before 1914, when we landed in 1900, when I'm sure some of you might have heard about the Royal Niger Company, that the British had to pay 865,000 pounds to take over the trading areas in what they consolidated in readiness for the annexation of Southern Protectorate with the Northern Protectorate. That question of paying 865,000 pounds at that time, somebody bought something from somewhere, and that person is still the owner of that piece of estate. The Nigeria you have, yes, hold it there. The Nigeria you have is a joint venture. You saw Prince Charles the other day, and he came. You saw the sitting arrangements. We've not moved from where we were as at that time they created the union. It was a business venture. It was the trade of the era to go to wherever you can, beat them down, take whatever you can. So the British, the French, everybody was doing their own everywhere. But what became Nigeria was where the British had come towards this axis, and they managed to make their first landings. I'm sure you know about the Lagos colonial of 1861, how Kosoko and Dosumo, like that, the oil rivers. They came from the Atlantic waterfront, entered into trade treaties and protection treaties with some of those trading partners in little bits and patches. Those treaties, dating back to the 1840s, 50s, 60s, and all of that, was what the British had in their hands at the time. They were pushing northwards. This is Atlantic. You see Lagos there, you see Port Harcourt here. This is the Atlantic waterfront. These British came. You can see that apart from River Niger, the map is divided into two sides. The British entered from this side, and all the parts in that lower part were already in their hands at the time. On the other side, I'm sure you all remember the jihad, which we still have. You remember that they were foreigners too who invaded, landed in Sokoto, 1804, and conquered the portion in green, the portion in green in your map. They overran them. 1804, the British came in the 1860s. That means they were here 60 years before the British got here. Now, having secured that portion that you see in green, they were pushing downwards. They also wanted to get to the Atlantic waterfront. The British wanted to get to what was left on the east. On the eastern side is Cameroon. On the northeastern side is Chad, then Niger, and then Benin Republic to the left. The French had already taken all of the other places. The British would have pushed all the way to here, if not for that caliphate that was already occupying here and pushing downwards. They met halfway in a fight that happened in the Ilorin-Benue axis. Caliphate coming to the ocean, the British trying to secure the balance of the land. After a short while, it occurred to them, we're on the same mission, oh boy. Two robbery gangs after the same target. Say, why do we fight ourselves? Why don't you bring what you have? I bring what I have. We consolidate it so that we can share the benefits of having it permanently. And that was what became the amalgamation of 1914.